Part 1 in this series of videos exposed my landlord Bob Ors as a German masquerader murderer and why he was able to deceive me for 14 long years. This part 2 video provides proof of his sadistic, wild nature from my emails that document my dealings with him and how he has made attempts on my life. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. In part 1 video, I explained how I came into contact with Bob Ors and his in-laws when I moved to Tampa, Florida from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as we were all members of the same church and attended weekly services together. I also explained how I became a tenant in one of the apartment complexes owned by Bob Ors. Then I explained why I did not want to expose him as a German masquerader and a murderer to avoid being troubled more by him in retaliation. But my sources urged me to expose him. The reason I decided to do so is that he is raking in money and we should try to prevent him as much as possible from being rewarded further for murder or for murdering an innocent white adult and child by cremating them alive. In addition, his methods also must be exposed so that his potential victims can beware of him and avoid becoming victims. Otherwise, he will definitely murder more innocent people because he has developed it into a science. Then I explained why I was deceived for nearly 21 years about his true sadistic, murderous nature. The reason is that he appeared to be a very devout Christian as a member of my church. When I experienced trouble as his tenant, I did not attribute it to him but to German masquerader national leadership who want me dead and probably have $1 billion bounty on my head for constantly exposing their wickedness and thwarting their plans to make victims of other people. I thought German masqueraders were forcing my neighbors and others to trouble me and could not think Bob Ors as a Christian could do such things. In this part 2 video, I will chronologically describe the experiences I've had as Ors's tenant for 14 years, providing proof of his wickedness with the emails I sent him for the mistreatment and abuse I suffered. I will also explain the diabolical cunning he employed to use others to trouble me without suspecting him for orchestrating all the troubling events. As I mentioned in part 1 video, I came to Tampa, Florida area from Milwaukee, Wisconsin in December 2002. I got to know Bob Ors and the Fike family because we attended the same church. I got a job with the Florida Department of Children and Families in May 2009. The place of work was about 32 miles away from where I lived in Holiday, Florida, and took about 50 to 60 minutes to commute one way. I needed to rent a place nearby. That's how I ended up becoming Bob Ors's tenant at the end of July 2009. But first, this is my email of July 7, 2009 to Bob showing that I made him aware of other tenants troubling me. Bob, I can try the real estate apartment rental guides on my own, but if I get into an apartment with wrong type of owners, they can make my life a living hell within 2 to 3 days and keep me frying for the entire 1 year duration of my lease. Not knowing anybody, I am trying to avoid that kind of hell. That's why I am requesting your help in locating the right type of apartment. When I started renting from Ors, I was hard pressed for cash. Since it would take some days for me to move all my furniture and other items, I discussed with Ors if I could start moving a week earlier rather than after August 1, 2009 when my lease began. He allowed me to do so without having to pay any extra, especially since at that time apartment complex owners were usually running move-in specials with the first 1 or 2 months rent free with a 1 year lease. But problems with the apartment office manager, Elaine Wade, began immediately. She told me that I would have to pay 1 week's rent. Here is my email to Ors dated July 27, 2009. Bob, we had discussed at church, and you had told me that I could start moving my things in. Now Elaine wants me to charge 1 week's rent. I think this is not what we agreed to. I have also been hard pressed for cash. Verizon will want its pound of flesh for its internet and phone service in advance payments because I have a 1 year agreement with them. Tico will demand a security deposit. I need relief from all this. Please let me know if Elaine is going to enforce her new demand to charge me 1 week's rent. I think it is grossly unfair and not according to what we agreed on. I hope you can help. Also, I would appreciate it if the shower curtain rod could be installed in the next couple of days. Just as I was writing this message, I realized the pattern Bob Ors used to trouble me. He would use his assistants like the office manager or his maintenance man to either directly or through someone else trouble me. He gave them instructions on how to trouble me. Then I would have to complain to him 2 to 3 times. He would then play the good guy and the knight in shining armor and stop that form of trouble. The cycle would be repeated with another kind of trouble, or the same trouble, such as noise by neighbors, repeated again and again. The apartment manager, Elaine Wade, and after she retired, Sandra Ashley, used the same trick. They would use other tenants or their children to trouble me. I would have to complain 2 to 3 times before they stopped the trouble. The trouble would then start again after a month or so. All this is well documented in my complaints via email. I believe that Bob Ors has been discriminating against me from the very beginning by charging me higher rent than anyone else with the same apartment. I rent a 1 bedroom apartment. There is no washer, dryer, or a dishwashing machine in the apartment. The kitchen is cramped with only 63-inch wide. I came to know the tenants in the adjoining apartment, unit 5009, which is a 2 bedroom apartment with a full kitchen, a washer, dryer, and a dishwasher. The tenant told me that they were paying $565 in monthly rent, while my rent was $535. There was a notice on the office door hung there for a long time which advertised that studio 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom apartments were available for rent for $375, $465, and $550 respectively. It seems I have been paying approximately 15% higher rent than other tenants in similar apartment in the apartment complex. My next email is dated only 1 month after I moved in, and that is August 31, 2009. It states, Bob, for a couple of days I have been noticing air being taken out of my car tires. Today morning, August 31, 2009, it was really bad. After work I checked and one of my front tires had only 16 psi pressure. The other front tire also had low pressure. Should I be talking to the police about it? You also mentioned that you had air in the complex. I didn't find any. Please let me know where I could get air filled in the tires in the apartment complex. I continued to suffer the problem for full 8 months. My next email concerning this matter is dated March 2nd, 2010. Bob, life at the apartment is getting a little tiresome for me. I complained to Elaine before about air being taken out of my tires. She just refused to entertain the idea that someone was doing it deliberately, as there have been no incidents in the complex before. It started with air being taken out so that I had to have tires inflated once every 5 days. Then the frequency increased to twice a week. Now I have to do it once every 2 years. Air gets taken out of my tires at the apartment complex, and then as I reach my work parking lot, more air gets taken out. At the apartment complex, it started only a few days after I started living here. At work, it started only 2 days ago. Today, the air was 12 psi when I had the tires filled. You can imagine what my state of mind is when I have to deal with this problem day in and day out now, with the knowledge that I may not be able to get to work, and worse, I will have to keep buying new tires. I've suggested to Elaine that a camera be installed to monitor a parking spot so that we can determine who is doing it and complain to the police. She told me point blank that is not going to happen. Please give me your advice on how this problem can be tackled. This problem then stopped. The problem at the office had stopped immediately after I had complained to maintenance, after it had occurred only a couple of times. But I suffered the torture at the apartment complex for more than 8 months. There was no air available in the apartment complex. It's available about 50 yards away in the strip mall next door, where I would have to pay 75 cents or $1 each time to fill up my tires. But I bought a tire inflator at Walmart, though I still wasted a lot of time. The neighbors in Unit 5009 next to mine, with a common wall between us, were a white female, her daughter, and two of her mixed race girls. The grandmother did not seem to be working, but the daughter probably only part time. So I befriended them to see if I could help them in any way. One time they seemed to have car trouble and were probably in an accident. I gave her about $400 to get the car fixed, as she said that's what it would cost, and they did not seem to have any other vehicle. But without ever hinting that I expected the money to be paid back. A few times we had meals together. Then they started troubling me by waking me up at night or in the middle of the night. It was extremely bad and went on for probably 6 to 8 months. It was difficult to endure as I worked full time, leaving home around 7:20 a.m. and returning around 5:45 to 6 p.m. and sometimes even later when I worked overtime. I complained verbally to Elaine many times, but nothing was done about it. At that time, I had not gotten into the habit of sending in all my complaints via email. So, for a few years, I have no documented record of my complaints about neighbors troubling me by waking me up by making loud noises. I again thought that masqueraders were threatening them to continue troubling me with noise and waking me up at night when I fell asleep in my living room. So I did not completely cut off relationship with them. Then once a grandma came to my apartment and gave me a hamburger. I had to throw it away after a couple of bites as it was very sticky and strange tasting. I got relief only when the 50 to 55-year-old grandma was murdered. She was actually put to death because she had given me poisoned food. Then her daughter and granddaughters moved out. The next incident, dealing with Orus's diabolical, treacherous nature, came in October 2011 when I was involved in an auto accident when a mattress on top of a 2001 Chevy Tahoe van in front of me flew off into the path of my 1998 Chevy Prism on the highway. I swerved slightly to the left to avoid hitting the mattress. My car skidded on the slightly wet road as it was drizzling and landed with a 270-degree turn on the side of the road in a ditch, just avoiding hitting a very strong wire fence. I was still not too savvy about auto insurance claims. In the only previous accident in 1990 before this one, I accepted about $3,600, the amount the insurance company gave me as my car had been totaled. On the advice of another church member who turned out to be another masquerader and a murderer, I hired an attorney this time, who deliberately misguided me. He should have told me that I should have my car looked at for repairs, but he didn't. My car was still drivable but needed some fixing. Bob Owes immediately stepped in and offered to help me in having my car repaired from a mechanic he knew. I believe it cost me less than $1,000. When I got the car back, the dashboard was broken and patched up with some resin, but the car was driving fine. The explanation from Bob Owes was that the mechanic had to have access behind the dashboard to fix it. However, the resale or trade in value of the car would be considerably reduced. I still did not suspect Bob Owes of any evil, but this was an incredibly diabolical evil he indulged in. He and the masqueraders colluded with the attorney so that I would be hurt in every possible way. The attorney did not tell me to have the car repaired. Before I could think of it myself, Orr stepped in and offered to have the car repaired. He, in fact, towed it to the mechanic himself. The car was deliberately damaged by the mechanic so that it would easily fall apart while driving on the road. Fortunately, it did not. There have been other times when mechanics have sought to damage my car. One actually put a sledgehammer to my brakes, uh, the drum, with a lot of force right in front of my eyes. But the brakes continued working for many years. I can attribute my escaping serious accidents because of deliberately faulty repairs only to God's help. In this accident case, masqueraders orchestrated events to further harm me as much as they could. Bob Owes colluded with them to deliberately have my car damaged further by his mechanic with the hope that I would soon be involved in another serious accident and be killed or maimed. Though my injuries warranted much higher compensation, I received only $6,200. I had to go to an emergency room out of town related to my injuries. Even my medical bills that I received subsequently were not fully paid. I received collection notices and calls for many years. Because of the accident on my record, I ended up paying higher insurance that was ultimately higher than the total compensation I received. Thus, Masquerader church members did their utmost to hurt me as much as they could by recommending an attorney who would deliberately misguide me, and Bob Owes recommending a mechanic who would deliberately further damage my car and make it accident prone. I believe that one must earn one's I believe that one must earn one's living and not receive money through fraud. I did not want to receive compensation in an accident that was fraudulent. That's why I did not learn all the ways one could maximize one's compensation in an auto accident. But in this case, I was cheated out of legitimate compensation by Bob Owes and German masqueraders colluding with the attorney, and in fact had to incur expenses out of my pocket much more than the compensation I received. Fortunately, my brother left for India a few months after the accident, and I was able to acquire his car to replace the damaged car. Bob Owes' intention has always been to keep troubling me and keep me constantly under tension with the intention of ultimately killing me or having me murdered. Offering to help me have my car repaired was one such attempt. He has come to my apartment a few times over the years for repairs, and I believe he tried to murder me with the tools in his hand. But God has protected me as his angels have done more than 1,000 times in my life. In such instances, I sense that God's angel simply invisibly binds the person and limits his movement so that he cannot touch me. And I have also noticed that in most such cases, God's angel makes the person bend down slightly while limiting his movement. I've noticed that in Bob's case a few times when he was there alone in my apartment with me, and in many cases uh, uh, with other people as well. Next, a black couple with a couple of children moved into Unit 5009 next to mine. They troubled me by making noise only a few times, perhaps because the husband was working. But the wife kept me under tension by parking her car inches from mine at odd angles. I was always tense for probably a year for fear of my car being damaged. I have an email dated January 2012 complaining about that. Further, the 11 to 12-year-old son had the habit of throwing a football and playing catch with other kids deliberately near my car. I was always under tension of the car being damaged. Verbal complaining to Elaine did not help at all. It never helped by verbally complaining to her or in writing. Now, I like to keep about 1 year's worth of food supply stored in my apartment in the form of grain and cereals for emergencies, especially with the possibility of a civil war looming in the United States that I talk about so often in my videos. Bob and his son Stephen, who provided maintenance for the units, then acted to discourage me from doing that. I have a series of emails dated from March 2nd, 2013 to March 26, 2013 discussing the rat problem in my unit. Here is the one from March 3, 2013. Bob and Elaine, I just discovered I have a rat problem again. At 8:30 p.m., I discovered that my 20-pound gunny bag of rice had been gnawed open. So I have transferred the rice to containers and put it all in an aluminum drum, which I purchased specifically for that purpose, and I'm hoping the rats will not be able to penetrate. I have applied some rat bait. I hope something can be done about it. My emails show that the problem persisted for at least a month. I have never ever seen rats anywhere else in the apartment complex for the 14 years I have been here, except for the one or more in my unit. There can be no other explanation than that the rat was introduced in my unit by Bob or his son Stephen Ores. About a couple of years after moving in, the Black family left because their car was vandalized. That might have been done as a form of intervention by our non masquerader side to stop them from troubling me. The next tenant in Unit 509 was Elaine Wade's daughter, who moved in sometime in late 2013 or early 2014. The next frightening incident occurred on August 3rd, 2014, as described in my email. Bob, in my 5 years of stay in the apartment, this is a first. This morning around 10:30 a.m., I found about a foot-long gray snake crawling through the cracks between the wood panels on the patio. Then I discovered the wire mesh screen on my bedroom window, which was open at the bottom, enough to let the snake crawl in. Many times I keep the glass window pane in the bedroom window open for circulation. This snake could have definitely climbed in through the bedroom window. I hope something can be done about it. Is there a way to permanently fix the mesh screens on the bedroom and living room windows? This would make me feel safer. I would then be able to keep the glass panes on the windows open when I need to for circulation. I complained to the office manager, Elaine Wade, who told me that this was not unusual and no harm would come. I then knew that nothing would be done about it and I would have to live with it. I lived with that snake for 2 to 3 months and saw it grow longer, more than twice its original size, and fatter. Then then it was probably removed. In my 14 years of stay, I have never seen another snake in the apartment complex or in the neighborhood. Now there's a vacant lot next to our apartment complex which I use for jogging. I sometimes jog on the grass in the apartment complex, but county sheriffs have signaled to me not to do so and not jog on the streets because they know and I know that there are people who take out their guns to try and shoot me dead. A majority of tenants in our apartment complex are African Americans who have probably committed murder in their countries of origin to be allowed to come to the USA as immigrants. They most likely have been ordered to become tenants to provide high occupancy rates for Bob's properties. I know many of them have tried to shoot me dead and always face that danger anytime I take a walk or jog on the grass in the apartment complex. Both apartment office managers Elaine Wade and the current one Sandra Ashley have made similar attempts on my life many, and I mean many times. Elaine Wade lived with her husband. I know that when Elaine Wade's daughter moved in Unit 5009 after the black family moved out, her husband used to go to that apartment and probably try to shoot me through the wall. Sandra Ashley has tried multiple times. When Masqueraders did not believe that she was trying to shoot me dead and that an angel was preventing her from lifting the gun, they arranged outsiders to come and try whenever I walked by or jogged by, to come and try from her apartment. The result was the same. I know this because those who make attempts on my life are rewarded with new furniture, such as patio furniture and other perks, which I see with my own eyes with the people around me. They and other residents have left explosives in their cars to blow me up when I walked or jogged by or when I would start my car to drive to work. This includes the current apartment manager Sandra Ashley, as well as one of our neighbors and the one family that lived in Unit 5007 near me. For this reason, I started jogging in the vacant lot. Masquerader minions then let loose a pit bull one day. Our side probably threatened them, and it did not occur again. Then, a few days later, a long black snake was introduced, but that was taken away when the culprits were threatened. I saw that snake only once. Besides that snake in the vacant lot and the one in my apartment complex, I have never seen another snake in the area in 14 years. Thus, definitely, that snake was deliberately introduced by Bob's team below the patio deck in my unit, and the wire mesh screen on my window was deliberately loosened to allow the snake to enter my apartment and kill me, as it was probably a poisonous one. Now, my roof had started leaking in the rain. Though my complaint is not documented in an email, the temporary fix was to put a tarp over the part of the roof that was leaking. Then Bob had a contractor replace all the roofs over all the units. My next email is dated October 16, 2015. By that time, I had started working from home in my call center job at Department of Children and Families. The email states, Bob, is it possible for the contractor to designate a day when they are going to work on my roof so that I can go to work at the office that day? The crew had finished their work yesterday, which they usually do around 2 to 3 p.m., and just came over my roof just to bang around. They were actually working on the roof still away from mine. After I talked to you, they all left. So they were banging around to trouble me as I was taking customer calls, but stopped after I complained to Bob. After working on other units, it was now their turn to replace the roof over my unit. Naturally, there would be a lot of banging on the roof, and I would be unable to do my job from home. That's why I asked Bob for an advance notice in my email so that I could go to the office those couple of days. I also spoke verbally to him to let him know the situation and he assured me that they would give me adequate notice so that I could go to the office and work from there. Then one day, without a notice, they started working on my roof while I was on duty at home and taking client calls and started non-stop loud hammering. I called my office and explained the situation to them and told them that I would come into the office as soon as I could. I talked to the men working and told them the situation and told them to stop, as Bob had assured me that I would be given advance notice when you decided to work on my unit. They said they can do whatever they want because they have a contract. Then one of the guys took a 4 by 4 wooden beam and came at me with his hand lifted to strike me. Somehow he held back, seemingly unable to strike. Then I went and complained to Elaine. She told me the exact same words, that she could not ask them to stop as they had a contract. Of course, in hindsight, it seems all clear that the situation was orchestrated by Bob so that the contractors could make an attempt on my life. In part 3 video, I will describe further events, particularly with the office manager Elaine Wade's daughter who had moved in next door. She made my life unbearable. I will also describe other events that describe what a cruel sadist Bob Orse is, which also show how he must be made to pay for his crime to deter Germans and German masqueraders from acting with cruelty. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos.